admirable.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Before we get started this morning, obviously with COVID items that are happening in the world right now, we will try to keep our distance from everyone in the room here, including us up here on the dais. We will have to work through items as far as voting goes. We'll have to call for votes so everyone can vote independently. Both Sonny and Cathy will be on audio, so they will be calling into the meeting. Is Deb planning on being here, or will she be calling in? Okay. Currently, right now, I have items number 8 and number 10 in the agenda, where we will have to make the phone calls and get those people on the line in order to conduct business on those items. So, in short, I'm asking for everyone's patience here along the way. It'll be a little unorganized at first, but we will make our way through this meeting. With that, Deb is not going to be here. Understand. So we'll go ahead and get this meeting started. Recommendations from this Planning Commission on certain items from this agenda will be considered by the Board of Commissioners at their regular meeting on April 7th, 2020 at 10:30 a.m. The Planning Commission utilizes speaker request forms, which are available in the Commission chambers during the meeting. I.e., if you are an applicant on an item or wish to speak on an item, however, that you have in the agenda packet, please note that I'll call for those items. If you are someone that's not the applicant or the agent for an item and wish to speak on an item, please fill out a speaker request form, and those are located on the back table. We'll go ahead and get started. Did I miss anything, Jerry?
No.
All right. We'll do a roll call vote and note that I am present, Travis is present, and Sandra is present here on the dais. And I'll let Sonny and Cathy both respond.
Mm-hmm. Cathy.
Present.
Sonny.
Present.
And Deb is gone, and Jim is gone.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes. Approval of the March 9th, 2020 minutes. Does anybody have any questions, comments, changes to those minutes? Did we get those reviewed?
I move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second for approval of the March 9th, 2020 minutes. Is there further discussion on that item? Sonny, Cathy, I can't see you, so I'm probably going to have you guys affirmatively give me a no comment or something here along the way on each one of these items.
Okay. No comment.
No comments.
Thank you. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and we'll do a roll call vote. I guess we'll start with myself.
Rich.
What's that?
I'm going to say Rich.
Okay. Aye.
Cathy.
Aye.
Sonny.
Aye.
Travis.
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 2 is approval of the agenda. Today's, we have consent items 3 through 7. We have regular items 8 through 12, and our normal housekeeping items 13 through 18. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none here in the room, Cathy or Sonny?
No.
Any changes, Cathy, to the agenda?
Cathy's muted.
Cathy, I need you to unmute. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second for approval of today's agenda. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. I'm an aye. I'm an aye.
Rich, Cathy,
Yes.
Sonny,
Aye.
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Motion carries. This brings us to the consent agenda items.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brittany, Molitor, and Interim Planning Director. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners, who will make the final decision. Item number 3 is conditional use permit review CU 7104 for David and Andrea Allard to review a mobile home park in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit CU 7104 to the June 22nd, 2020 Planning Commission meeting in order to allow the landowner to fix the existing violations with one condition. Item number 4 is conditional use permit review CU 1003 for Michael Howe to review a dog cat boarding kennel in a limited agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit CU 1003 with conditions. Item number 5 is conditional use permit review CU 1529 for Jim or Mary Skull to review a cabin to be used as a ranch hand residence in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit CU 1529 with conditions. Item number 6 is conditional use permit review CU 1602 for Eva Olson to review a single-wide mobile home to be used as a single-family residence in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit CU 1602 with conditions. And item number 7 is conditional use permit review CU 1634 for Jessica Thermes to review a recreational vehicle to be used as a temporary living quarters for no more than 180 days per calendar year in a low-density residential district, and staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit CU 1634 with conditions.
Thank you. Are there any items that staff wishes to pull from the agenda?
No.
Are there any items that the membership wishes to pull from the consent agenda?
No.
Seeing none here in the dais, Cathy, are there any items that on the consent agenda that you wish to pull from the agenda?
No.
Sonny, same question.
No.
Are there any items in the from the folks sitting in the audience that they wish to pull from the consent agenda? Again, items 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, we will all vote on with one vote. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I so move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Rich,
Aye.
Cathy,
Aye.
Sonny,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. This brings us to item 8, and I believe that we have to call this person in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just let me know when we get them on.
Did you hear that?
Terry and Carmen, this is Rich Marsh, the chair of the board. Are you on? Hello?
Okay, yep,
All right, sir, we're going to go ahead and get started.
yep.
We're going to go ahead and get started with this agenda item. Thank you for calling in today. Cody, go ahead.
Okay,
Cody Sack, Environmental Planner. Agenda item number 8 is conditional use permit 1901. It's to allow a vacation home rental on the subject property in a low-density residential district. The applicant is Terry Saylor. This has been in front of the board several times before. There's been some issues with things that the applicants needed to get the planning department, such as a pumping contract. There was, this property has holding tanks instead of a conventional system, so the planning department wanted to have a contract in place with Hill Septic that says anytime that the applicant calls them to come out, that they'll be out in a certain amount of time, and that they will be the one who are servicing the contract, the systems. We did receive that. Currently, as the property sits today, it's 4.74 acres. The access is off Smoky Ridge Road. There's 5 bedrooms, and the state state department came back and said that they can have a maximum of 10 overnight occupancies. It was routed around. The biggest thing was the septic issue, and that has been taken care of. Staff did perform a site visit, and they found that one of the bedrooms was missing a smoke detector. Staff received pictures from the applicants that showed that a smoke detector had been installed in the room. And it was also noted on the health department's inspection that they had smoke detectors in all their rooms and fire extinguishers on all the floors. They did pay, when this was brought back in March at the last meeting, they had some things they needed to submit to us. They did submit the $300 continuation fees, and they did submit the letters of hearing, the white slips. For considerations for conditional use permit, there's the 5 things. Staff found that the proposed single-family residence as a vacation home rental should not affect the use or enjoyment of other properties in the vicinity. It should not affect normal and orderly development. There is plenty of off-street parking, and the proposed conditional use permit should not present odor, fumes, dust, noise, or vibrations, or intrusive lighting. Staff is recommending approval with 17 conditions, and I would just like to state that Condition 3 states that the applicant can get a Pennington County operating permit every 1 year instead of every 6 years. That's just because with the system being holding tanks and used as a vacation home rental, the planning department would be more comfortable managing that system more regularly, and 204J does give the planning department authority to do that.
Thank you. So as have they resolved all of the issues with the planning department that you guys had on
Yes.
this item?
Yes, they have.
Thank you. Are there further questions for staff on this item? Cathy, do you have any questions on this item?
No.
Sonny, same question.
No.
It was Terry, and I'm sorry, the other name is escaping me. Sir, none of the commission members here have any questions on this item. Would you like to discuss, Carmen and Terry, is there any items that you would like to discuss with the commission here before we vote on the item?
No.
Okay. Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I so move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion on the item? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Rich,
Aye.
Cathy,
Aye.
Sonny,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Carmen and Terry, thank you very much for calling in today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Item number 9.
Item number 9 is layout plan 20-04. It is to combine lots to create lot 1R of Chase Elkhorn subdivision. The applicant is Dick Compass. Currently, as the lots sit, tract 2 of lot B and C is 6.3 acres and it's zoned limited agriculture district, and lot 1 is 1.58 acres and zoned suburban residential. Staff did note that combining the 2 lots would create a lot of 7.8 acres and would be dual zoned, so a rezone and a comprehensive plan amendment will be required to prevent that dual zoning. This was routed around the department for review. No real comments came back. The county environmental planner just said that the soils are somewhat limited and that the applicant would have to follow 204J if any septic system was installed on the property. This would be combining two lots into one. There's already an existing septic for the house on the property, so there shouldn't be any need for septic or profile hole and perk tests. There is an existing access to the subject property. And for the purposes of this layout plan, staff finds no significant issues for the applicant's request. The applicant is in the audience today if there's any questions. And staff is recommending approval of layout plan 20-03 with 8 conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff on this item?
I just have one question. The zoning, one is zoned one way and one the other, and it indicates you'll need to go through a different process to get one zoning for the 2 lots as they're combined. Is that correct?
Yeah, so when you, basically what'll happen is if you combine those 2 lots, you'd have part of the lot zone limited agriculture district and one zone suburban residential. It's not in harmony, so they'd have to go through the process to rezone that into one zoning and a comp plan amendment, because they're currently both zoned.
Yeah, I understand. But what zoning will they ultimately want? That suburban residential?
It would be up to the applicant on what he wanted to decide. There is suburban residential, and if he wanted to go the limited ag route, he could request a lot size variance.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? I don't see Travis have any questions. Cathy, do you have any questions on this item?
No.
Sonny, do you have any questions on this item?
No.
Okay. You said the applicants are in the audience?
Yes.
No one up here has any questions on anything here. If you guys have any thing you'd like to say on the item? No? Okay. Seeing that, staff is recommending approval of layout plan LPL 20-03 with 8 conditions. I would entertain a motion.
I move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion on the item? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Rich,
Aye.
Cathy,
Aye.
Sonny,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Motion carries. Brings us to item number 10.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brittany Molitor again. Item number 10 is application for a conditional use permit for a vacation home rental. The applicants, James and Amy Heidegger, are requesting a conditional use permit to allow an existing 5-bedroom residence to be utilized as a vacation home rental on the subject property. As the property sits today, it is in limited agriculture district. It consists of 2.09 acres. Access is off of Nephew Road. The lot contains a single-family residence with attached garage and a 20 by 24 detached garage. There is no special flood hazard area on the subject property, and there is a wastewater treatment system with a current operating permit on the lot. This was routed through the interdepartmental review process, and no items of concern came. The 5 considerations for a conditional use permit request are up on the screen. I will just read the answers. The proposed use for the single-family residence as a vacation home rental should not affect the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity, for the use is already permitted and upon property values in the surrounding areas. It appears that by allowing this conditional use permit, the use should not affect the normal orderly development or improvement of any surrounding vacant property in the area. The proposed use of the existing single-family residence should not require any utilities or facilities that are not already in place. Access is provided off of Nephew Road. Additionally, staff has no drainage concerns relating specifically to the applicant's request. The zoning ordinance does require 1 off-street parking space per bedroom. 5 parking spaces are required, and it appears there is adequate space for parking on the subject property. And this proposed conditional use should not present any odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibrations, or intrusive lighting. The applicant has complied with all of the application and submittal requirements for a VHR under section 319 of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. So staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit 2005 with 15 conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff on this item? Seeing none from Sandy or Travis. Cathy, do you have any questions for staff on this item?
No.
And Sonny?
No.
Okay. We do have a James DeForest. He's a neighbor to the property, and he is on the phone. James, would you like to comment on this item?
I would. I own the property that borders the property in question. I am directly to their south. I've got a 15.5 acre piece of part ranch development. I've had issues with the previous owner of this property encroaching on my land. And my concern is that bringing new people to this property on a continuing basis is going to have that same effect ongoing. I understand people want to make a living, and that I don't oppose, but I oppose this as it sits. My solution is that they fence their boundary to establish that boundary for any rental people coming in. The problem with it as it sits in such a small piece of land that doesn't meet any of the requirements of our covenants out here to land size is our adjoining properties all look like forest land, and people take advantage of that.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. DeForest?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Sir, my name is Sandy Rundy, and I am one of the planning commissioners. You indicated a delineation or a way to separate the properties. Were you talking about a fence or just a drawing perhaps to give to residents to show, where the property lines were? What did you, I couldn't understand what you had in mind.
Hi, Sandy. My request is that they fence their property to define their land, since it's such a small piece of land. I mean, 2 acres out here in the hills is personally, I didn't think people were allowed to build on something that small initially. And there are some fence posts there indicating that I have put up indicating a property boundary, but those fence posts have been ignored by the previous owner, and he knew where the boundaries were and decided to encroach on our property anyway. Rental people coming to the hills through this property, I think at their expense, since it's a small piece of property, they should fence the property to define that area of that rental property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions for Mr. DeForest?
You took mine. Sandy took my question.
Okay. Cathy, questions on your side?
Yes, thank you. I kind of agree with the neighbor, personally living out where I do in the hills. I understand clearly that visitors to our area, they don't really understand the concept of where private property ends and Forest Service is and so on. And so I think that that's a pretty small area. It doesn't have to have the type of fence designed to keep, animals out or anything. It just has to be a fence to mark the boundary. And it can be, somewhat minimal, but it does need to be maintained so it doesn't fall down. But also, I think it'd be wise to include in the packet of information for the guests that, kind of a map shows the boundary of this property. Beyond it is private. If you want Forest Service for hiking, you go over here. Because it does have, the neighbor is absolutely right. It happens all the time, mixing up.
Thank you. Sonny?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Okay. Are you the applicants? Would you like to come forth and please, when you get to the dais, state your name for the record and.
I'm Jim Heidegger, the applicant, one of the applicants. She's back there, so My idea would be, because we have to make a book up that every renter goes through and reads the rules and stuff. I think placing signs 50 or 100 feet apart, delineating our property from the neighbor property, and put that, obviously in the book that you don't go past them lines, should alleviate that issue.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead,
do you
Travis.
plan on putting those on posts, like putting posts up there?
Yeah,
and
we'd put,
just
I'm just thinking steel fence posts with a decent sign up saying, do not go beyond, or something, no trespassing beyond this point for guests of this property, or something like that, just to make it obvious that you don't go past that.
I had the same thing written down, staggered fence posts.
Yeah.
With signs on there, not necessarily fencing or encapsulating your property, but making it very aware that anybody out there will see these signs. They will be on steel fence posts and delineating the property, so
Right,
they
that's-
stay out of the neighbor's property. I think that would be respectful, and are you agree, so you'd be agreeable to that if we
Yeah.
put that as a condition?
I mean, I don't know what kind of distance you want, 50 or 100 feet. I mean, it's not a big property, so it's not like a big deal really, but I don't want to put a fence around it. It just doesn't look as nice, and usually neighbors don't want fencing, but, I think, if we did 100-foot increments or 50-foot, whatever would make the other guy happy, I guess.
Okay. Well, 50 feet is about from here to the end of the room here, so that would be sufficient, I would think. So, any further questions for Mr. Heidegger?
Heidegger, yeah.
Cathy, do you have anything? Or Sonny?
No, that seems like a reasonable solution. At least start there and see how it goes over the summer. And if it appears that more is needed, like stringing a wire between the posts, then may have to go there. But I'm all right. It's a good place to start.
Okay. Sonny?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this. I would imagine in many other cases where you'd see like a no trespassing or private property sign posted on a tree or on a post, that would usually be done by the owner of the property wanting to give that notification to others. This feels a little bit in reverse. So that comes to my mind. I'm not sure what the others would think about that.
I guess speaking, Sonny, for myself here on this, I think that as part of the conditional use permit, the applicants understand that they need to, one, advertise to their guests in the book, and then two, out there, this row of signs on the south end of the property would clearly delineate what the book is intending, and that is, if they want to go hiking somewhere else, on Forest Service property, they need to do that, but they just can't take out the back door and head due south.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Travis.
I think I heard Sonny.
Go ahead, Sonny.
Well, yeah, I agree. I see what you mean. Either way could, do what is needed. I just wanted to throw that out there. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, if we were going to tell him that he had to put up a fence, but this is the better suggestion. I understand typically the person who owns the property puts up the sign, private property, no trespassing. But in this particular case, I think it is prudent, for the landowner to do that, who wants to do this. I think that at least starts it. He's responsible for those individuals that leave his property to trespass, and so.
We want to be good neighbors.
They want to be good neighbors, and, if he gets phone calls, if there's complaints on this, then that gives us the opportunity to reevaluate it in the future and consider our options at that point.
Any further questions for Mr. Heidegger? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that, staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit CU 20- Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Please come forth. I thank you for.
Morning, Council. My name's Tom Skog. I own the 15-acre lot next to Jim, so we're probably, 300-400 feet probably from the property boundary of this 2-acre lot here. And just a few concerns of mine. you know, we moved into this area back in 2012, as our understanding, all the lots were required to be 10 acres or more out there. And it is, it's like the national forest. Now, a few years ago, this house showed up on a little 2-acre slot. We didn't know if that got grandfathered in or was part of something else, but it surprised us that it was there, and that's fine. Didn't have any issues with the neighbors there. My concerns, though, is with new people coming in, just like Jim's. You know, I have 5 little kids. I'm not real excited about strangers coming into my backyard every other week just because they're not familiar with the boundary. And I think that signs, I don't think are going to be adequate. It's real easy to walk past a sign, but like a little type of barbed wire type fence. The north side of all our properties is lined by a barbed wire fence. You can't even see them. They blend right into the background. This is like, you know, if you're not familiar with the property, it's a forest out there. And so it's really nice and it's really appealing and it's somewhere where people want to go for a walk and stuff. And I just see a sign just and you're going to have people in the backyards all the time. So I don't believe a fence is going to be adequate. I share those same concerns as Jim. I'm not on the border with them, so I haven't had the issues with the previous neighbor, but those are my concerns that we're not real excited about. You know, the fact that the property was there, no big deal. Then now they want to turn that property into a rental and have all kinds of people coming in. It just doesn't seem like it fits out there. I'm not excited about it. It's nothing personal. We're not excited about it. And again, my biggest concerns is I don't want to have to be kicking people out of my backyard every other week. And I do have 5 little kids that play out there. And so that is just a concern. So I just, the signs, I mean, I understand that, but they're unsightly and they're not as effective as a fence. So I guess that would be my biggest concern on that. And that's really it, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Do you have,
I have a
go ahead,
question for
Travis.
Did you say your backyard is fenced?
So what I was saying is, so these are all like 15-acre pies out there where we all sit.
Could
So
you come up and put up this map on
our
guys?
neighboring border is not fenced. However, the north boundary of all that property out there is fenced. So, and then you get into whatever division is to the north of us. And there's just a barbed wire fence that runs all the way around the outside of the properties, not in between the properties.
So this property wasn't included in the original platting of this subdivision because it's completely separate, right? It's
Correct. So our best guess, we're not entirely sure, is either it's part of a division across the road and it got grandfathered in because it's just a little tiny piece. Everything else out there are in basically 15-acre or bigger slices.
Could you point to your property, sir, so we understand where you're coming from?
You have can you get like the topographical view? I guess I don't see it on here. Oh, actually I did. I'm sorry. I did see it there. No, that'll work if you want to pull that bigger. Can you go back to that one? I'm sorry.
No, yeah, sorry, there's that.
And if you want to zoom out, I don't want to touch your mouse there, but,
Oh,
oh, no, it doesn't zoom out. Okay.
Are you in one of the blue subdivision lots?
So, yeah, I believe, right here. I believe this is Jim right here, and then this would be ours right here.
So we have the
So
two.
it's a few hundred, you know, from there to our property lines of, you know, a nice, pretty nature walk. It's a few hundred feet, you know, so, yeah, so we're right, sorry, but we're right there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Travis, do you have further questions?
I'll ask one other one. So you're wanting him to put a fence in rather than try this first and then, and see if it works to deter. I understand what you're saying. Signs are there and people are going to ignore signs. However, you know, to put in a fence can cost a lot more money than putting up signage. And if he's trying to be a good neighbor and he regulates that very well, and he has conversations with those that are coming there to let them know the importance of that. Really what it comes down to, even if you put a fence, they can still cross that fence to get into trespass. So you would have to do your due diligence regardless whether he has a fence there to make sure you notify the appropriate authorities if there is any kind of trespass. And once those start getting documented, then we as a planning commission can, you know, with complaints and things of that nature, if he wants to renew it, we can actually require stricter conditions for him to follow for that.
Sure, and I appreciate that. I guess my concern with this being a conditional use in the first place, we're talking about something that we're already confident is not going to work, and then we're going to have to come back here and do it again where it seems right now you're in the position to require that as a part of the conditional use permit. It'd make the neighbors happy, and should alleviate any, hopefully, chance of confrontation out there. Not that I see that. I mean, we're friendly people. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to come off that way, but and I'm sure these are real good people here, but they're not the ones going to be living there. So they don't really have control of the people there. You can give them a pamphlet, a flyer, you can talk to them on the phone, but it's not like it's family, friends, and neighbors. I mean, these are just visitors and tourists, which is great. We love that out here, but I think a real like some kind of just like a little barbed wire fence or something. Maybe Jim has a better idea, but I know that I don't cross my northern boundary, just because it's I don't know if you ever tried to cross a barbed wire fence, but it doesn't end very well. So it's just some type of barrier certainly is going to be a heck of a lot more effective than a sign posted bright red or purple on a tree out there, So that's just my opinion, and that's my concern. That'd be my preference, is if we could put some type of physical barrier so that we don't have to deal with that and come back here after making multiple phone calls or whatever. And maybe it never happens, but in all likelihood, I would say that the chances it would are significantly better than the chances it wouldn't. So if we can take care of it now, that would be fantastic.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you for your comments. Go ahead, Travis.
one more follow-up with that.
Sure.
If I remember, the gentleman on the phone said he had problems with the last person that was there trespassing. If I understood the comments before, did you have any problems with the previous owners coming onto your property and things of that nature?
Well, I've seen them out walking around, so I've never confronted them. I mean, if it happens every once in a while, I'm not concerned about it. I haven't had any confrontations with the previous owners, no.
Okay.
Cathy, Sonny, any follow-up?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I'd like to come back to the comments I made before, and for the neighbors, I don't mean to be objectionable. I empathize with your position on this, but I'm a little bit concerned because we get a lot of these VHR applications, and people, especially the neighbors, are often concerned about the exact same things as you are, people coming onto their property and being problematic in one way or another. But if we're going to say that they have to have a fence or a sign and then come up with specific requirements, and then wouldn't we end up needing to do this, or potentially being asked to do this in every other situation? I mean, can you imagine every VHR owner out there being required to put up a fence because the neighbors are trying to keep people from leaving that property? It seems potentially problematic. However, I'm not strictly objecting. If this commission wants to add that condition, I don't necessarily object. I just wonder if it is actually maybe a problem for us to try to require something like this.
That's a good point. I think we've had other ones that didn't have fences that we didn't require them, and the neighbors were concerned.
I think each individual conditional use permit needs to be reviewed on its own details and facts associated with where it's at and how it's impacting and frankly how the concerns of the neighbors as well, trying to make sure that everything gets heard and everything gets addressed. So Cathy, any more on that?
Well, as I said earlier, I think a fence is ultimately going to be needed because just because that's how it is. But I also think that in terms of a fence being unsightly, out here where there's dense woods, a barbed wire fence is not exactly unsightly. And I don't doubt that it would cost a little bit more, but sometimes you can use a tree as a post, and so you don't even have to go to that expense. One, maybe two wires is all a person would need. So I don't think it's that much to ask for, a strip of barbed wire around there. I'm going to support. I'm not going to object to this. I'm not going to vote against it. But I think, if those of you that are sitting there, signs are the best approach to start with, well, I'll support that, but I think ultimately it's gonna take a fence.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you know, I believe that putting up signs won't give you everything that you want. It'll cost him more than he wants. So it, to me, seems to be a reasonable compromise. And if in fact then people do trespass onto your property, you make the phone calls, register the complaints, then it will come up for review. Then we can add that he, put barbed wire or a piece of wire or something, around for a fence. But I think the signage might be a happy compromise at the beginning.
And I appreciate your viewpoint on that. My only thought to that is, we're not the ones trying to change the settings of how things are currently, and that's putting the onus on us. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think signs are adequate, so I just don't see the point. I think it's a waste of time, personally. I don't think it's a bad idea that, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I don't think it's going to be effective, and I don't believe the onus should be on us when they're trying to change the use of a property from a residence into a rental home. That's going to affect all the community that we live there, and so that's just my personal take. And I'm sorry that it doesn't align with everybody's, but that's just kind of where I'm at right now with it. So thank you for your time, though. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's an issue that, is causing all types of,
I'm sure.
conversations and conflicts, and, that we need to get it addressed at some point in time.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Go ahead, Travis.
I have another question. This might be a little, whenever that community was developed and things of that nature, I know y'all don't have fences in between your properties, but is there any kind of covenants or anything out there, or homeowners association that says y'all can't put fences up? And I'm asking that question because if there is, and you're requiring him to have a fence and then he can't put it up because of the homeowners association, I just want to make sure that that's not something that's going to be a conflict either.
Not that I'm aware of. They're technically not in our covenants. If you look
Okay.
there, they're like that little tiny piece that dips into it. So Jim, I'm assuming he's still on the phone. He might have a better answer for you. He's lived there a lot longer than we have, so he may be an authority for you there. Are you still with us, Jim?
I am. The Hart Ranch development here had covenants that restricted barbed wire. Those covenants have expired. I'm not a huge barbed wire fan myself, but a smooth wire fence will accomplish the same thing. And it's a little easier in wildlife. And aesthetically, you almost don't see it. You put a smooth wire fence up, and it accomplishes the same thing.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the gentleman at the dais? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Sonny.
I can't recall another time that we've required anyone to put a fence around their yard to contain people. Maybe it's happened before, but I just like to reiterate, I think it's concerning to me that if we do this, then it's almost maybe setting a precedent, because every person who will object to a VHR, any neighbor, if they say, well, I just want them to have a fence, then this could end up becoming a condition for VHRs all the time.
No, I understand what you're saying, Sonny, and sir, I definitely understand your concerns, having kids, all of those things. But I got to tell you, we are up here, and every 2 weeks we hear about VHRs, and in all of these conditional use permits, it's required where if there's any complaints that the Planning Commission hears, it can come back before us as a commission and review it. And I'm trying to think to myself, when have we gotten a complaint on a vacation home rental that has required that issue to come back up in front of this board, and we then put on further restrictions? But we also have neighbors that come up and say that this is this, and there's problems all the time, and all these other things. And so there's all of these items that are supposedly happening, but we don't ever actually get the complaint that comes to the planning commission where we've then had to come back and put further restrictions on VHRs. So it's an interesting position for me, at least up here. I won't speak for everyone else. When we hear these things, I certainly understand your concerns with the kids as well. I'm in agreement with Sandy on this. I think that the compromise here is we put some posts up with signs. If that doesn't work and people can't read and or follow the signage when they're a guest at a vacation home, then a complaint gets filed, we come back, and we can then require a fence. And in that instance, the trigger for that fence was the items that weren't being followed in the conditional use permit to begin with. So that's where I am at. I will be in favor of this with the amendment to post signs on the property every 50 feet on the adjacent lot lines. Anybody else have anything else?
I've got one more item on that.
Is this Mr. DeForest? Sorry.
It is. It is.
Go ahead, sir.
In most conditions, I feel that would be a good step, and maybe it is a good step here too. The object to or my main objection to this is that the house is really close to our lot line. I've had another property borders me on one of these other small acre pieces. They actually built too close to the lot line, and by the time anybody in the county found out anything, they were trying to build an addition on, and then I had to, I was forced into a variance because they encroached on the setbacks. If this property is really enticing for the people there because of the small backyard and how close it is to my property, that it's too enticing to jump out into the forest. And I'm with Tom. I see this as a constant policing on our part, which I don't have a whole lot of time to do. But if I'm forced into policing, I guess that's your decision. So, and that's my final statement on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Any questions for Mr. DeForest? Okay.
Rich, this is Cathy.
Go ahead.
One option here, we're really only talking, the fence is only required on the one, so it's a triangle, 3 sides. Only one of them would really need a fence because the other one does open to Forest Service. Signs would probably be sufficient there. And then, you wouldn't even need a sign except to say that it's Forest Service. Or am I wrong on that? It's limited ag, it's not Forest Service. I'm mistaken. So you're right, it would take 2 sides of the fence, yeah. Okay, scratch that idea.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the applicant, do either of the applicants want to come back up and address any of the questions that have been addressed?
I guess just we have another rental over by Keystone. We've never had any complaints from neighbors. And these are people that are paying $300 to $700 a night to stay there. They're not gonna go running around. They're doing things every day, and they got a lot of money invested in this staying there. So I don't see them. And if we put up the signs, the one side is fairly close, but signs right by the house, we'll maybe put them closer there just so they know. And I don't see as a big issue myself. But
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
With that, staff recommends approval of conditional use permit CU 20-05 with 15 conditions. And based on conversations here today, I would like to add a condition that the owner post signs on steel fence posts every 50 feet on the property lines, delineating the boundary between his property and the adjacent property.
I'd move approval.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Further discussion on the item. Seeing and hearing none, roll call vote.
Rich,
Aye.
Cathy,
Aye.
Sonny,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Motion carries. Brings us to item 11.
Good morning, Christina Proetti, County Planner. Item number 11 is Layout Plat 20-05. On February 19th, 2020, the applicant, Rustler's Ranch, has requested to plat approximately 10 acres of the subject property to create Tract A of Rustler's Ranch Edition, leaving a remaining unplatted balance of approximately 59.82 acres. The subject property is currently zoned as Limited Agriculture District. If approved, the subject property's current zoning of Limited Ag would satisfy the proposed 10-acre tract, and there is no special flood hazard area on the subject property. The proposed land use would be for a single-family residence, which was indicated on the layout plan application. Structures presently permitted on the subject property are a single-family residence built in 1975, and this is per the Department of Equalization's property record card. There's an 8 by 12 guest cottage on skids, built in 2000. In addition to the single-family residence, a detached garage with loft, an on-site wastewater treatment construction permit, and a on-site wastewater operating permit, which they currently need to come in and pay the $20 and get their permit. The proposed lot is able to gain access from the existing access easement granted from the U.S. Forest Service. I have attached a copy of that easement in with the staff report. Staff has routed this through the interdepartmental review, and there are no other items of concern for this property.
Thank you. My only question, and I believe that this was picked up by the Register of Deeds. On the plat itself, it says previously submitted Tract A of Rustlers requesting denial of this submittal. Will that language be revised then on the final plat when this thing comes through?
The Register of Deeds comment regarding the title.
Yeah.
I did make a condition.
Well,
stating-
it says looks mostly good, but I've communicated with Bill Welk, and we both think it's a little odd how the surveyor has chosen to illustrate tract 1754. And I'd agree with that. He says previously submitted Tract A of Rustlers requesting denial of this submittal. So it's just a
Yeah, that
detail, I
was-
guess, that made me very confused.
Yeah, we can definitely address that with their agent, the surveyor, and how it's represented on the minor plat.
Okay, yeah. Well, that would be my only question. I've never seen wording on something that you're asking approval of to request denial, so.
Yeah, I believe they had requested a plat in the general description that lists some requests and denials, approvals and denials, and I think they just, for some reason, put that previous denial on the plat
Okay,
plan.
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Sandy.
my questions are on page 7 of 8, the current analysis. All of these structures were built without building permits?
There are some structures on the premise that we don't have building permits for, which I'm addressing with the owners.
I'm sorry.
It looks as though there are some structures on the premise that don't currently have building permits.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, according to, looks like the Department of Equalization, none of those 4 properties, structures have permits.
are you talking about under analysis, section D?
Yeah,
Yeah.
9 by 40, lean to 8 by 40, 16 by 40.
We do have to address that separately from the plat. I'm not able to put that as a condition for a plat, but we can address it
Thank you.
separately.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't understand that. Thank you.
No problem.
Any further questions for staff? Seeing nothing from Travis. Cathy, any questions?
No.
Or Sonny, sorry.
No.
I was going down the dais here. Okay. There are no folks in the audience to discuss this item. With that, the recommendation from staff is that staff recommends approval of layout plan PL 20-05 with 11 conditions.
So moved.
I'll second this, Kathy.
Cathy seconding. Roll call vote.
Rich,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Sonny,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Motion carries. Brings us to item 12.
All right, item number 12, Major Planned Unit Development Amendment, PU 20-01. Staff recommends to continue this until the April 27th Planning Commission hearing meeting so that the state's attorneys can further advise the Planning Commission and do more research on it.
Continue to what meeting?
April 27th?
And is that the date that you guys discussed with the applicant as well? Yes?
We were waiting to give a final date.
Right, we did speak with the applicant last week, or I should say, Christina spoke with the applicant last week and let him know that we were continuing it. We wanted to give ample time for the state's attorney to review this, to provide a recommendation to the planning commission. Because as you remember, at the previous planning commission hearing, there was some concern from both neighbors. The planning commission had directed Mr. Tushin to speak with his other neighbor to find out what their stance was in having that as a vacation home rental. We did receive a email from the other neighbor on the west side, and they are not in favor of a vacation home rental. So we have two property owners at this time that are not within the PUD, of a 3-person PUD, that are not in favor of the vacation home rental. So we are looking to the state's attorney to make some recommendation as far as if the validity of, allowing that or not in that PUD. That is correct. So that's what we're waiting for. The applicant is aware that we are continuing it pending further legal review, so that recommendation can be made to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Staff is recommending to continue PU 20-01 to the April 27th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call vote.
Rich,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Sonny,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are now on item 13.
Good morning again, Brittany Molitor. Item 13 is a public hearing on amendment of Pennington County Comprehensive Plan Ordinance Amendment OA 1901. The comprehensive plan viewed to 2040 to amend and supersede Pennington County's existing comprehensive plan. This was put in front of the Board of Commissioners in December. They did make their recommendations for some changes. There was not a lot of substantive changes. The largest change was in reference to planned unit developments, and the planned unit developments are recommended to no longer be a zoning district in and of itself, but instead an overlay district in the instance where you need maybe multiple conditional use permits, but it would still have to meet the requirements of the underlying zoning district. So that is the biggest change in the comprehensive plan to date. I know that there are some minor changes. I did get some comments from Commissioner Johnson, and I spoke to Commissioner Lassiter. There might be some minor changes to move forward to the Board of Commissioners, but their hearing will be on April 7th, 2020 for any changes that you guys have and any recommendations that you have.
Okay. I didn't see those redlined in this packet that was sent, so are those, so let me try to get a barometer of who all had changes. I didn't have any changes based on what the board had kind of redlined some items. Not big concerns, from my perspective. Anything on your end, Travis?
I did, but remember, I wasn't here for the last meeting, so I took the notes that I have from last meeting. There was a couple of sections that I believe were changed slightly, or there was additions, and so I had some questions, and so I felt that addressing those issues here would be appropriate.
Okay,
Because we're really just dealing with some of the changes that came from the Board of
correct,
Correct.
Commissioners. No, we're not dealing with the whole.
correct. Okay, so
So-
you have some questions.
Yep.
And Cathy has some questions and changes. Sonny, do you have any?
Not at this time.
Okay, me neither. Sandy?
No,
All right, so what I think maybe we do is Travis, we go through and maybe look and review your questions, and then we go through what Cathy has and then get the final version of this to the board, so this thing can move forward.
Yep.
And the reason I'm pushing is because it'll never be finished if we don't get done. So we need to get done, and then we can make things happen from there. But I do appreciate everyone's review. So Travis, I'll turn it over to
All
you
right.
for your items.
So my first one, we already talked about this, Brittany. So 7.1, infrastructure overview, dealing with wastewater. So there was this whole paragraph that was in last month's packet. Was that going to be added to this one? And if it was, where? But my real concern is, we kept being told at the beginning of this is more of a policy, a general overview. And while I don't have a problem referencing 204J, because I've seen it in some of the other areas referencing the ordinance that it is, but I thought we're keeping it on a general aspect, and whenever at the very last sentence, it says, through section 204J, all on-site water treatment systems are required to obtain an operating permit showing the system does not have an adverse impact upon public health and in the environment. Well, that's in 204J. Is that something we put in here? Because that would be then directing a policy out of a general guideline. I mean, maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I'm just, I'm used to working with guidelines and then direct policy, and usually the guidelines are just broad, saying reference this policy, reference this, and then the specifics like that permit is in 204J. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, you're saying, should we be referencing a specific policy or ordinance or anything for that matter in this document?
I think we should say 204J is the governing document like we have, but I think that last sentence, then it's now putting in policy in our comp plan that you have to have a permit showing the system does not, well, if that's already referenced in 204J, you know what I'm saying? It's putting the direct policy into the comp plan.
what, are you on page 7-2?
Yes.
And I have it
7-2. Well, so last packet, this was the
Oh, I
notes from
see.
last
Okay.
one. So I'm using that as my,
Dan,
and trying to figure out how it was
thank
fitting in
you.
here.
I was just
Sorry.
trying to line that up with mine.
No,
visually.
you're good. So that's all I wanted to find out is, if it's an overview, how specific are we supposed to be getting into it? I don't have a problem saying 204J because that is the policy that it goes to. But then putting the permit in there, we didn't put a permit in any of the other sections when we're dealing with building permits or anything of that nature. We didn't say you had to have a permit for this or a permit for that.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I'm okay with the way that it's written because it says through section 204J, and then it says kind of it's kind of stating what 204J is actually requiring. But I understand what you're saying. In my mind, it also says above that it's the wastewater treatment systems are regulated through section 204J of the county's zoning ordinance. So in my mind, the whole sentence could be stricken because it's addressed above, it's referenced above.
And that's exactly what I was thinking, that last sentence be stricken because it's already referenced above and it's going into more detail.
Oh, Rich, this is Cathy.
Go ahead.
My recollection is the reason that last sentence was added is because there were comments from public that they wanted to have a kind of a firm statement of policy that septics would be handled such that they would not have any impacts. And there was comments even to the point they wanted some definition around that. And so as a fallback, rather than trying to state really what this, the, the goal and so on for this was to just simply refer back to what the ordinance already does. So I think this was in response to some comments that we received, I believe.
Okay, go ahead.
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. Without having the opportunity to specifically review what the mission of the comp plan is, I think it's not only a policy document, it's also a document that addresses growth and the adequacy of our infrastructure, and part and parcel of that is roads, water, et cetera. So I think this is probably put in there because it's a huge issue in terms of our growth. How are we going to protect our water sources? And that's very different from whether we're going to allow a building permit on a particular piece of property. So I think that the inclusion of reference to 204J really does tie into the mission of the comp plan.
Referencing 204J, I don't have a problem. I guess maybe I didn't make that clear. I don't have a problem referencing 204J because it says exactly where it's at, but referencing the aspect of having the permit from 204J. Well, the permit's already in 204J. We're kind of duplicating the wording, and it looks like we're putting the ordinance into the guidance document. Unlike the stormwater, people have to have stormwater permits, right? And we're not even referencing stormwater permits and the stormwater one right above it. I'm just kind of wondering if we're doing a general policy rather than getting too specific.
I think we're getting too stuck in the minutiae. I don't have a problem with referencing 204J. I wouldn't have a problem with referencing wastewater. Obviously, there was, as Cathy stated, I think this was in response to a very specific concern. Basically what it's doing is incorporating by reference 204J, and the fact that it's referencing 204 requires a permit, I guess I just don't have an issue with in this document.
Okay.
But it's totally up to you.
I mean, I'm just thinking, if people see the consistency throughout the document, I guess that's what I'm concerned with is, one place they're saying you have to have a permit, and then somebody else saw the stormwater stuff, and we don't have to have a permit because it doesn't talk about it. Well, then they have to go look at the ordinance to see. Same thing with wastewater. If they already have to go to the ordinance, I guess that's where I'm kind of.
It says through section 204J, so it's referring back to the requirement of that, and it's basically just emphasizing that. This isn't saying thou must have this. It says through this other document, you'll need to do this. That's how I read it.
So it's just highlighting the one aspect of that 204J, but even though we're referencing up on the very first set. Okay.
It's how we're accomplishing that particular mission statement, that particular goal. But it's up to the board. I don't have an issue with it within the document. It's pretty much standard legal procedure to incorporate other ordinances or rules of law within a document.
Right. I mean, I already said I agree with that because it is already referencing at the beginning of it. Do we do that with all the other
No, it was
areas? See, this is only one specific that we're doing it through the particular ordinance. We're requiring a permit. In the other ones, we're not saying through this particular ordinance, we're requiring this to get to this level. This is it just was odd to me that it's the only one that seems like we're highlighting that very specific permit.
It was probably a very specific concern that someone wanted to address, because that is a huge issue.
I get it that it's an issue in the county because we've got. I mean, there's a lot of people with wastewater systems. I just thought it was odd that it was just the one issue that is highlighted in the comp plan and not other areas. That's just what just came to my attention when I was reading it. I was like, why are we focusing on this particular permit rather than every one of these areas that have some very specific permits to make sure we're protecting different things?
Probably because, again, it deals with our infrastructure. It actually deals with the infrastructure within the county.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember the specific item that Cathy brought up, but if it was reemphasized, then that's probably why it's highlighted in there more than anything else. But I understand what you're saying. Are you okay leaving it as written?
I mean, if that's what y'all want, that's fine. I just prefer it come out only because we don't see it in any of the other areas. But, I mean, because we're already referencing to 204 in the first sentence. But, I mean, I was looking for consistency through the ordinance, and maybe that is consistent. I just didn't see it anywhere else, and that's why it struck me as being outside of the rest of them.
Okay. Anybody else's thoughts on the matter? Sandy's shaking her head no. Sonny?
No.
And Cathy, you're pretty sure that someone had that emphasized as a comment, and that's why it was put in there different than everywhere else in the document?
Right. The reason I recall it is because, I mean, so it came to us as a written comment, but also I had some people approach me about that. And so, I mean, I remember some discussion, and then they wanted it very clearly stated and even tightened up beyond what the permit is now. And so I feel pretty confident that we had that discussion, but I'm actually quite ambivalent about it. I mean, it doesn't really matter to me one way or another.
Okay. So procedural question, I guess, would be, are we submitting our comments back to the board for consideration?
So
Is that
the
what's-
document will be with your recommendations and any changes as part of that.
Okay. All right.
And Rich, if you don't mind me just tacking on, I also had the same feeling of chapter 10 as well, and I talked to Brittany about that one this morning. It seemed very, very specific in the goals. When you compare all the other goals, were very, we'd like to see the county do this or move this way. But she also said, well, this is the wording from
The Weed and Pest Board, and it's falls in line with their requirements by statute and goals of their.
But did we do that from any other ordinance, like weed and pest control or any other ones? Did we do that in any of the goals too? Take very specific wording from any of the other agencies that implement something and put it in any of our goals? That's, you know what I mean? Because it seemed kind of very specific. And I thought we were supposed to be kind of a guidance, because if the county changes its ordinance to maybe be more restrictive, or we find out something else later and do something different, then it's a guidance to saying that we're trying to do best practices to control weeds, to control, the equipment used disturbing the ground on the property. You know what I mean? I thought it was supposed to be more of that kind of, like, we're here to protect the environment, we're here to protect from noxious weeds, we're here to protect this, that, and the other, rather than being so specific in this document.
Right, that was a request from the Natural Resources Director, and it was approved by the board. So that was a request for him to implement into the comprehensive plan.
Okay. Those were my two, because they just seemed very specific, but there we go.
Only the two items?
Those were the only two items that, just piqued my interest when I was reading it, that they were very, very specific.
Chapter 10. Okay. Go ahead, Cathy, on your items.
Well, mine were mostly editing in nature. On 8.1, the change, as I understand it, what that was made since we've seen it last, was they added a line about talking about hiking. They have Black Hills National Forest contains over 450 miles of world-class hiking and running trails, and this is the new part now, such as Black Elk Peak. Well, I don't think that's the trail, because so I suggested language such that, so trails, and then the new part would be such as those in the Black Elk Wilderness and Norbeck Wildlife Preserve leading to Black Elk Peak. I think that's more accurate.
I agree.
And I sent these by email, so Brittany has them. And my other one is on 10-2. And this is about mining reclamation. And the additions, so when we saw this last, we had the term reclamation would be done in a legally, financially feasible, productive manner. And the additions is legally permissible, comma, financially possible, fiscally possible and financially feasible. It just seems to me that fiscally possible and financially feasible are redundant, unless I'm missing something. I think it should be one or the other.
Where are you at?
I'm on 10-2. This is on page 10-5. Sorry, Rich. Page
10-5.
10-5.
It's
Was
goal
confused too.
NCR-5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah,
5-2.
NCR-5, yeah. And and that's, so I'll find it here too. Okay. So, yeah, page 10-5. So up on the top there, or, the goal NCR-5, that's what so reclaimed and illegally permissible, fiscally possible, financially feasible. I don't really understand the distinction between fiscally possible and financially feasible. And so I'm questioning whether they both need to be there.
Fair question. I can see how they're both it looks like they're both trying to say the same thing.
Right.
Was that change from the commission or was that change from the matrix?
That was changed by the commissioners.
Can you remember why?
I do know that that was a recommendation by Commissioner Rosknecht. He just wanted it to be more robust as far as, how it's done. So that was the recommendation from him and approved by the board.
Right. And I actually don't object to the new language. It just seems to me that the second phrase then, financially feasible, could be struck.
Yeah.
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. When I saw the amendment as well, I actually had the same comment. I forwarded to Brittany. I do think it's redundant.
So which one would you recommend to keep?
I would say financially feasible.
Cathy, do you have a question or a comment
Well,
on
I do, and working in the area of reclamation and restoration from mining and so on, all my life or my career, I just think companies need to understand that there is an expectation, a baseline expectation, and if the project doesn't work to achieve that in a feasible manner, of course, then they shouldn't be doing it. So fiscally possible strikes me as that then there's an option to say, well, consider finances of the project, it's just not possible to reclaim or to restore and so on. And I think that's a bad precedent. I think it has to be done. We have to pick, it has to be done, certainly if something is feasible, but then they have to gauge whether the project can support it or not. And if it doesn't, then probably shouldn't be doing the project.
So strike fiscally possible, is that what you're saying?
Well, I would be more comfortable with that, yes.
And leaving financially feasible.
Yes.
And that's what you said too, right, Sonny?
Yeah, that's what I agree with.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
I have no comment.
All right. Next one, Cathy?
That's it.
Okay.
Just the two things.
So, so we had four items essentially. One was on 7-2 that had to do with the referencing of the sewer, the section 204J. And Travis, I guess, do we want to just send this on to them as a question of, does this need to be in there?
Well, I was wondering, the printout that we have for today, that whole phrase isn't even in here. Where's it supposed to be in here? I mean, I know it's listed as 7.1. I'm guessing it's an added paragraph to the current wastewater 3 paragraphs that are there,
Yeah.
so, or is it replacing a paragraph? That was the other question. I guess I didn't follow up on that and make sure where this was sitting too. I made all that fuss about it and then I didn't say, hey, is this just an added paragraph or what?
I think that was originally in there. The stuff that was added was the types of systems and the options. That was something that was requested through the Board of Commissioners.
So what's in front of us in our current today's package is what the final wording is supposed to be,
Correct, that the Board of Commissioners.
not what I
approved.
was looking at over there, so.
Correct.
I thought that was the wording that they were trying to put in here, but see, me missing that meeting, I didn't catch that, so I made all that. See, I should have just told me, this is the final wording, Travis, and
Yeah,
it wouldn't have
This is what the board had approved, yes.
been, okay.
So we're okay leaving the wording on 7-2 as is. Trying to summarize everything here for you, Brittany, so we know specifically what we're going to send to the commission.
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. I think the Commissioner Marsh's suggestion, you certainly could, as a comment, question for consistency purposes, whether we want to make it, whether the board wants to make a specific reference to an ordinance or not. You could at least put that comment in, they could consider it.
Right.
Well, they're making it through I'm rereading this. I thought this was being added to it because I didn't see it in there. So now I'm rereading this to see what it says because that might have been a null and void issue now that I realize what was transpiring. I thought this was, it's what happens when you miss one meeting and then you're thinking that this is trying to go into there. I'm sorry. If you don't mind, let me see. It may not even be an issue because I don't think I see that exact wording in there. I think they reworded it or whatever they did in here and it just references the ordinance, which, like I said, I was fine with that. I don't think it's as detailed as it was in this particular sentence. That's true. That's what was confusing me. But see, now that I know that this is the final, I apologize. So. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. All right, I've read through it. Yeah, they put that exact wording in there, but that's okay.
I think we forward it onto the board and say, our question is whether or not, because it's mentioned above, does this need a specific reference?
Do we need to reference that there's a need for a permit? That's really the only question, because we're already referencing the ordinance that requires the permit, because the ordinance requires a permit. You know, and saying through section 204J, all on-site water waste treatments must operate showing the system does not have an adverse impact upon public health and the environment. Well, through 204J, part of that process is with a permit. That would just be just a question.
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing to pass it as is, but it just seemed like we were getting a little bit more into the very specifics of what the ordinance said rather than just referencing the ordinance, and then the people have to go to the ordinance and do their research reading what the ordinance says, because if they say I just need a permit, maybe they think, oh, I just need a permit, so then they go start to do the permit process, and then they realize, oh, there's more to this than just getting a permit.
Right. Yeah, that no one should be operating based just off this document. They need to go to the details. Okay, so that question will just get asked to the board. The second item was in chapter 10, right? And then were those just questions that you had, Travis, that why they were specific in here, and then you answered those, right? So
Yes.
is that anything that needs to go to the board?
I mean, if they feel that, that was just more of a question, because I felt the two things were both very specific, and since.
Okay. The next one was 8-7 on page 8-7 in section 8.2 or 8.1. 8.1, right? Mm-hmm. Which is on page what?
8-7.
For some reason I am. And that had to do with the wording proposed by Cathy for Black Elk Creek Wilderness Area.
Correct.
And Norbeck, et cetera, et cetera. Did anyone have any comments on that wording? Otherwise, I'm okay with that wording, and we would just submit that to the board for consideration.
Yep.
All agree on that? Good.
Sounds
right.
good.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the last one, we would delete the redundant item, we would take out fiscally possible and leave financially feasible, correct?
Correct.
So
Okay.
there's three specific comments that go back to the board, correct? All right,
Yes.
I'm getting head nods here from Travis and Sandy. Cathy,
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sonny?
Good.
All right, so, we will need, do we need a motion for, tell me what motion you want for us to send this back to the board with these changes.
We need a motion to approve the comp plan to supersede the current comp plan. How it's read, the comprehensive plan view to 2040 to amend and supersede the county's existing comprehensive plan with the 3 recommended changes.
Okay. Is everyone clear on that? I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor, roll call vote.
Rich,
Aye.
Cathy,
Aye.
Sonny,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 14, County Board Report.
The Board of Commissioners concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendations from the March 9th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. Item 15, items from the public. No one is here. Item 16, items from the staff.
Oh, we don't have any items.
No items from
What?
staff. Yep. Item 17, items from the membership. I guess I'd like to start off and just say thanks to everybody for attending today. Certainly interesting times we have. I know that there was a meeting last night down at the city, and I don't know if the county in general has had conversations about future meetings. I think that this process can work, even if everyone was home remotely. So I guess depending on how things are in 2 weeks from now, we will address how to conduct business with the meeting. Do you have something to?
I was just going to mention that perhaps in our some sort of information for the public and how they can call in.
Michelle, she's motioning you to come to the speaker.
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. I know we had a few individuals call in to the meeting. It might be a good idea in our future published notices to inform the public that that is an option rather than personal appearance.
No, I think that's a good idea. I just would say that they need to make those, we should require or request that they make those call-in requests known to you guys at least a few days before, so, Friday before, so you guys can prepare for them.
I also did amend the Planning Commission webpage that has that if they are not willing or wanting or cannot make a meeting, that they can submit the comments in writing and they can also call in. So that is on the website also with our number to get a hold of Jerry or myself so we can plan that with Joan and get people called in. So
Great. Thank you. So I guess we'll all just stay in touch here over the next 2 weeks and see how the world plays out, huh? Okay. Anything else from the membership?
Yes, I originally said I wasn't going to be here on the 13th meeting of April. My conference has been canceled out of Washington and Seattle, so I will be here. I mean, there's something going on over there, so.
Similar to that, my vacation with my kiddos has been canceled on the 9th through the 13th, so I will be here either via Skype or something else, so I will now be here as well. Come on up.
I have one more thing too. Also on our website, our office is taking applications via email and in the mail to limit person-to-person contact. So that's also something that our office is doing. It's posted on our website. So
Great.
Do you mind, have we sent out any other notices? This kind of goes back to what we were talking about sending out notices in the future for to be able to call in. Have we sent out notices that wasn't in there before for any of this kind of stuff, any publications or something? Do we need to send out anything extra? I know you said you updated the website, but has there been a public notification that went out prior to the they start to, stay away from each other, the social distancing and all that kind of stuff. Was there anything that went out prior to that we need to send out something else about that, or we're just going to rely on the internet, us updating the websites, and you can call in instead of coming in? Do you know what I'm saying?
Correct. I think our office, we've seen a lot less traffic at the counter in the last week or so, and that's something that Jerry and I certainly can work on with the applicants. We have been working with the applicants more over the phone and via email than person to person. I think that will continue and it will be greater. I do think that when we send out notifications for the next meeting, we will put something in there, as Michelle suggested, about that they can call in rather than attend the meeting. So they can still make comments as necessary.
Thanks, Christian. All right. Anything from you, Cathy?
No, you did a good job, Rich. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sonny?
Wash your hands. That's all I got.
That's what I've heard. Thank you. Seeing no more items from the membership, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Dang it. Roll call.
Rich,
Aye.
Cathy,
Aye.
Sonny,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.